Rich Ortiz here with the fighter's voice, the only voice that matters. You have that fighter on you right now. You have that. Talk about Mexican Independence Day. We can call this Teddy Atlas here in Las Vegas, Nevada. You heard it from the champ himself, simply knocking out the competition. Not Rich Ortiz here with the fighter's voice, the only voice that matters. And like Eddie
Lopez, because Josh Taylor is
the 4th division world champion, Mikey Garcia. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Richard Ortiz of The Fighter's Voice, the only voice that matters. And unlike our guest today, we're simply knocking out the competition. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and honor to introduce the legendary, the living legend himself, Luis DEBUBAS, who's going to be a 2024 Canada inductee into the Boxing International Hall of Fame. Luis, when you hear me say that, what goes through your mind the first time you hear it?
Well, I've been in boxing 40 years and, I work with so many fighters that are in the Hall of Fame now that to me, just my name mentioned, to me, it's a great, great honor, going, guys like Kid Gavilan are there, that I had hung out with in 1984, of course, Roberto, which I worked with, Wilfredo Gomez, Sofia Pedroza, Tito Trinidad, which I worked with Jamil Shadeh, his first 15 fights of his career. So a lot of great fighters are in that, and that I work with that are there in the Hall of Fame. So I'm just proud just to have my name even mentioned in it.
A lot of people should tell me all the time. I mean, they were actually texting me today and say, Richard, he's AKA the Cuban Connection. Now, you've heard that phrase before. What does that mean to you? And first of all, where did you find all these great Cuban fighters, and how did you get them over here from the islands?
Well, it's funny. The first Cuban fighter that I worked with was Jose Ribalta, and he was a Cuban that was born in the United States. And he fought Tyson. Fought Tyson's fight, one of Tyson's hardest fights. I worked the corner against him. But after that, every other Cuban that's ever came to the United States, Jorge Luis Gonzalez in 1991, he defected from the Cuban national team in Helsinki, Finland. I picked him up over there, brought him over here. Later made a deal with him with MGM Grand, which is a promoter, fought Riddick Bowe. From there, of course, I signed Joel Casamayor. Right from his first four-round professional, I took him all the way to World Championship. Fought Corrales 3 times, Jose Luis Castillo, Arcelino Freitas, Robert Garcia, Calcides from Australia. And he was, to me, one of the great Cuban guys that that came over. But like Casamayor, there was also the Relly Hurtado that fought 3 classic fights. One with Whitaker, he was winning the fight until he got clipped in the 12th round, but it was a great fight to that point. And then, of course, the Constance Sue fight in Palm Springs was probably the fight of the year. He had Sue down twice in the fight and later got knocked out. And, of course, the Randall Bailey fight. So every Cuban that's ever came to the United States at one time or another, I worked with. Later that wave came in with Guillermo Rigondeaux and Gamboa, Lara, Dorticos. I worked with Juan Carlos Gomez, was in Germany, came here, worked as a heavyweight. So I worked with most of all the Cubans that ever came now. And of course, the new wave now is unbelievable. You got these young guys like David Morrell.
Yeah.
Ioannis Tejes, Damian Lasky, and they're all guys that only got 5-6 professional fights, but they're ranked worldwide because they got so much amateur experience. So I'm very proud to have worked with so many great Cuban fighters, and and being part of that history, and it's been my whole life since I've been boxing 40 years, and it's been a big part of my life, the Cuban business.
I just have to say, you just gave the whole world a boxing lesson right now. And let's go back to Ribalta. Remember, do you want to continue? Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's right. Yeah, I was. Nobody expected Ribalta to go more than 1 round. Remember, because Marvis Frazier had beat Ribalta in a 10-round decision.
Exactly.
And Tyson knocked him out in 91 seconds. So when we went up there, everybody expected, that Ribalta was another 1-round fight.
It was very competitive.
And then, the rest is history. Tyson said it in a ring interview. He had the strongest and toughest guy he fought was Jose Ribalta. he actually fought him. He traded when he was down in the second round with that right uppercut. And Tyson tried to finish him off, and he fought him off. So it was a great performance. At that time, Tyson was unbelievable. I mean, he was unbelievable. Just the punches, the way they saw it. I worked the corner. He was in at that time. I remember I went to the fight with Chris Dundee, and all the old guys were there. Al Braverman, Eddie Mafu,
Al
the old
Braverman,
smart
yeah.
guys. They always tell you, "I've never seen a guy like this before." Everybody was saying he's the best heavyweight they ever saw at that time, and he was so fast and strong, and it was really amazing that night, 1986 at Trump. It was a small room.
Yeah.
It was a small. It must have been 700-800 people there. And I remember they put Tyson in the dressing room next to us, and he started listening to Sam Cooke music because you could hear it, So he did, and then he started hitting the hand pads. It looked like there were bombs. I got to tell you, it was Rebalta was. He got up for that fight. He fought. He showed a lot of heart, and and it was one of those nights, that he was able to perform that way.
You mentioned Al Braverman, man, and a lot of people. I'll school some of them. That was one of Don King's buddies, and I met him, and he was pretty moody. Unless you caught him in a good mood, he didn't have time to waste. Let's cut right through the chase. He just, okay, what are we talking about here, kid? That's what he would tell me back in the day.
Yeah, no, Al Braverman was one of those old boxing guys. Don King had him as his matchmaker, and Don had a lot of those older guys working for him. Eddie Mafu, was one of his guys. Jamil Shadeh was one of his guys, and he had a lot of smart old people working for him, Don, when he was younger, and they were all very very savvy, and they brought the good fighters to Don, at that time, and it was it was one of those. The times are totally different now, if you know what I mean. It's a different game, but back then, it was old guys. They had a different mentalities, different boxing mentality completely, as the ones they have now. I was blessed that when I came to Miami in 1984, I started boxing in '82 with the Burnett brothers from St. Paul, Minnesota. Brian fought Patrice Oliva for the world title in Napoli, Italy, which I brought him to fight for the title. But that's who I really actually started boxing with because I grew up in Minnesota. My father was a doctor. We moved here in 1966. I was 9 years old, and I lived in Minnesota from 1966 to 1984 when I moved here. So I started the boxing actually in Minnesota with the Burnett brothers. Bobby's one of the commissioners in Minnesota now. And basically, when I moved here in '84, the first fighter I signed was Nino Rebalta. Okay, but a buddy of mine says, "Hey, Duran's coming into town. He wants to make a comeback. Maybe you're promoting. You and Chris can help him out." And Betico was a guy, a Cuban guy, and he introduced me to Duran. We picked him up at the airport, and at that time we were both broke. It was funny. He was already been in a lot of multi-million-dollar fights, but he was broke. And I remember the fight was Victor Claudio. That was his first fight at the Miami Beach Convention Center. And me and Chris promoted that fight. And Duran won a 10-round decision. He had Claudio down. Then the second fight, this is going the ride to Barkley. The second fight was Juan Carlos Jimenez. He was a Paraguayan middleweight that can punch holes through walls. And I remember I took the tape to Roberto at a nightclub, rich and famous, and it was a BCR tape. And I said, "Take a look at this guy. He's ranked number 5 in the WBA." He's fine. He didn't want to look at the BCR. He's fine. Forget it. Bring him in. And I remember Duran. There's the tape I think on YouTube. Duran. He clipped Duran in the first round with overhand right. And actually, Duran, he staggered Duran. He bounced off the ropes, then he established his jab. He won a 10-round decision. Then we brought him to Atlantic City. Jerry Cooney became my partner. We brought him to Atlantic City. He fought Ricky Stackhouse. Then he fought Paul Thorne in Atlantic City. Then we fought the famous fight with Jeff Lannis in Chicago before the Barkley fight. And his performance, a lot of people thought he lost that fight. And after that performance, we got Barkley. Stan Hoffman was the manager, took the fight off that performance. He thought, Duran was totally shot. The only thing he did not know is when Duran, had to win, and he was very difficult to beat. And for Barkley, he came in 3 months before the fight in the camp, and he was 227 pounds, 227
Coming off the
pounds.
Tommy Hearns
And
knockout.
yeah, and basically, I got to tell you, he for the whole fight for the getting ready for Barkley, we're supposed to turn all the trainers, Plomo, everybody. You got to turn this guy's legs. You got to turn this guy's legs. This guy can punch holes through. You can't let Barkley sit. You got to turn him. And he for 3 months, that's all he heard from all the trainers. So we go in the ring the night of the fight. He gets in there and he goes, "Compa," he's my daughter's godfather, and he goes, "Compa, I'm gonna go in the trenches with this guy." And I remember Mike Akery, he was coming down the stairs. I said, "This guy's gonna trade with this guy." And that's exactly what we did. Right in the eye of the hurricane, and fought the guy, right, punch for
Yeah, he
punch.
did.
He knocked him down in the 11th round, one of the great fights. And when I get in the ring, Roberto goes to me, he says, "Listen, compa, if I would have moved, I'm 38 years old, I had no legs. Look at the ring. I was fighting in a cushion." So he basically changed the whole game plan in the ring the night of the fight. And that's why he's the great Roberto.
Yeah, he is. And I remember Iran Barkley was highly motivated. He dedicated that fight to the late, great Davey Moore. And Iran Barkley was coming off that shocking
That's
victory over
right.
Tommy the Hitman Hearns. And
Yeah.
Durant for that fight was actually pawing with the jab to set up the right. The right hand was landing great. And he was neutralizing Iran Barkley's double left hook.
Yeah. Well, Barkley turned him like the Exorcist with that left hook.
Oh, yeah, I
Remember,
remember that in the second round, yes.
flipped
But
and he
after that,
came
he
back at
neutralized
him.
it. Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, that was to me, that was one of the great fights I've been involved with for sure. It was a great fight, and the great thing about it, Duran to be a lightweight champion of the world and come and win the middleweight title, to me is one of the greatest accomplishments at 38. It's one of the greatest
I agree.
accomplishments, and not only in boxing and sports history, because a lot of guys, that were lighter weights, De La Hoya most recently, Trinidad, when they weren't looking for that middleweight title, they both got knocked out, and Duran fought a tremendous puncher at middleweight. The guy was probably weighing 180 pounds that night, and he went, everybody saw what he did, and to me, I think the Leonard victory was a great win because Ray was undefeated and he was
Yeah.
really the superstar at the time. But I think the Barkley win was the bigger win because he was an older man at the time, and to do what he did was, to me, it was amazing. Then he got the Leonard fight. It's the biggest payday of his career.
Yeah.
He got $7.5 million. We opened up the Mirage. That was the biggest payday of his career.
I don't know how he made weight.
And then,
I mean, at the press conference, he ballooned up, but he made weight, and he even made it under the weight limit, and he looked good.
156 he came in for that fight for Barkley. 156.
No, I'm talking
And
about when he got the Leonard fight.
Yeah.
I think he went 158 for Leonard.
Yeah. But I got to tell you, Duran later on, after the he wanted to continue to fight, and that's when we started with Vinny Paciencia. We fought him at the MGM Grand when he was 43. Then he fought Camacho when he was 45 at the Taj Mahal. And, he continued to fight until he was for 5 decades.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing guy. I know he fought when he fought Joe Goosen's nephew, when PJ Goosen, when he was 51 years old. That was his last fight.
He reinvented himself so many times, and he made all the experts rewrite their columns, because they were written before, as soon as the fight was slated in. They wrote Duran off, and he continued.
Yeah, they wrote Duran off many times, and he always came back. When he was written off, he always came back. That's why, to me, without a doubt, Ray Robinson's the greatest fighter I've ever seen. Of course, I never see him live, but I saw him on tape, and he's the best I ever seen is Ray Robinson. But
his full
there's
was
a
phenomenal.
lot of, for number 2 there, you could put Duran in there, you could put Henry Armstrong
Absolutely.
in there, you could put Mickey Walker in there. But he's right there with all the great ones in the top 5 for sure.
Absolutely, and we're talking about dominance in different weight divisions. And you got to remember, took Roberto Duran the entire 15 rounds after Duran's coming off that Tommy Hearns victory. And a lot of people thought that, okay, this is the round Duran goes out, and this is, but Duran continued to land that right hand, and was one of the reasons why Sugar Ray Leonard decided to make that comeback, because he saw what Burl Duran was able to do and neutralize that power and
with Marvin
actually be
Hagler.
savvy with him.
Marvin Hagler, actually, if you see the Marvin Hagler Roberto Duran fight for this first, if it would have been a 12-round fight, Duran was ahead of the scorecards. Hagler took him the last 3 rounds, won the championship rounds,
Yes.
which were 15 rounds at that time. But Duran, he was fighting the great Marvin Hagler,
Yeah.
at middleweight,
Yeah, I mean, Duran knew how to go the
So
distance. Duran knew the boxing, and he's just a throwback. And when he retired, he stood retired, and that's what I respect about him. And just like when Michael Spinks retired, he stood retired.
yeah, Michael Spinks. That's I introduced Duran to Mike Tyson on the night that Duran fought Michael Spinks. I introduced Duran to Tyson because I was like his idol.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I brought him. I saw Steve Lott at the Trump Plaza, and he said, "Oh, Duran, please bring him in. Mike wants to." And I brought him. That we took pictures. At that time, Tyson was sponsoring Diet Pepsi, so
Yes.
he came out to see Duran with a Diet Pepsi. And he was like a little kid asking Duran all kinds of. He knew about Duran's whole career, and it was then he asked me to bring him into the dressing room before the fight. And funny story, Tyson says, ask me, Louis, what do you ask Duran what he thinks I should do? And Duran goes, tell him, I swear to you, he goes, Duran, tell him to be careful, okay? Because Spink's got a good right uppercut and he can walk into something. And I changed his speech. I said, I wasn't gonna say that to the guy. I said to Mike. Duran says, jump on him. You're a lot bigger and stronger. So he goes out and knocks him out in 91 seconds. I think it was with the guy from Showtime, Larry Merchant asked him, I had Roberto Duran. It was me. Duran told him to be careful with the right uppercut.
Yeah, and
That's a great Duran
very, very
Tyson
awkward too.
story.
Yeah, Spinks was. You've yourself, and then I'll go back to Don King for a second, who, his son, I used to always talk to his son, Carl King, and Don King, one of the best promoters ever to do it. And I'm talking to one of the best promoters to ever do it. And the thing about it is, Luis, you're still doing it. I think we're going on 40 plus and you're still doing it. I mean, what
Yeah.
gives you that hunger? How have you made the transition from the old school fighters to today's fighters?
Well, boxing's a very difficult business. I've been at 4 years. I take a look at a guy like Bob Arum and Don King, and they're still working. And those guys, I don't know what planet they come from, because they're unbelievable guys. I'm going to be 67 in January, and now I got to go to Saudi Arabia with Frank Sanchez, and I got to take a trip. Bob Arum and King will get in a plane and go to the Philippines. 10 times a year. They don't care, and they're 92. So they kind of motivate me a little bit to keep going, because compared to those guys, I'm, those guys been around forever.
No,
And,
you're
and I work with both of them, and I admire both of them, for what they've done. It's amazing that, to see Don and Bob, still doing what they're doing. They're really, me, I'm a baby next to them. And
absolutely.
they're still doing it. So they definitely, make me keep going. Hey, if they can do it, maybe I can go a few more years. But it's a very, very difficult business. And, I've been blessed that I have a son, my son, Louis Cubas Jr., which is, he works with PVC, and he's very, very,
Very close to
I
Al
work with him
Heyman.
a lot. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's doing a great job. I mean, very close to Al Heyman, if not his right hand man.
Yeah, well, he's doing a very good job. He's a very, very hard worker, and what Hammond's done with boxing, he's brought more money into boxing than anybody in the history of boxing. He's made more fighters rich than anybody ever seen. He changed boxing completely, and I've been in it 40 years, and and there's nobody in the history of boxing. Then I work with everybody, that treats fighters and gives a fighter a chance more than PVC and Heyman. He's an amazing guy, he really is. And I'm blessed that my son works closely with him because he's to me he's without a doubt the guy that's brought the most money in boxing in the history of boxing by far and away. And I and I'm talking about there's a lot of big names there, but I think he's definitely the biggest in bringing money into boxing.
Talking about bringing money into boxing, and we're finally getting, bringing money is the tough matchups, is the great matchups. The Sugar Rays, the Durans, the Tommy Hearns,
Yeah,
the Marvin Haglers. They fought everybody, and
yeah,
therefore they generated money. Now we're starting to now move forward. These fighters are now starting to dare themselves to be great, risking their undefeated
yeah.
record and taking that step. And I think a lot of them, of course, they're thinking of the big payday, but now what comes with the payday and taking these big fights comes legacy. I had Regis Prograis on the show last week, and him stepping up and turning down an easier fight, and he wanted to take on the undefeated Devin Haney, who also admires Roberto Duran. And he told me, because he took a picture of looking into the eyes of Roberto Duran. And I said,
Mhm.
Regis, what was it like looking in the eyes of the great Roberto Duran himself? And he said, Richard, it was like looking at the devil himself.
A lot of people thought he looked like Charles Manson.
Well, Sugar Ray Leonard said that. He said looking at him was looking
Yeah,
like
yeah,
looking at Charles Manson. But my point is,
yeah.
these fighters are influenced by the Durans, the Tommy Hearns, the Marvin Haglers, the Sugar Ray Leonards. And Regis Prograis is one of those throwback fighters, taking on Devin Haney next Saturday, San Francisco, California. I got to ask your expertise. First of all, what do you think of the matchup? What do you think the outcome's going to be? And are you
Well,
happy
I
now that
think
these fighters are matching up with one another?
well, first of all, I think exactly like you. I think these guys are taking tough fights now. I think just going back a little bit, I think that we saw Crawford and Spence. We saw Javante Davis against Ryan Garcia
Yes.
did 1,000,003. I thought Charlo was going to do a lot better than he did with Canelo, but whatever it is, it is.
Yeah.
But Progress and Haney is a great fight. I think our company, Words Boxing, did a lot of the Muhammad Ali World Boxing Series. So he was in that series, and I know he was in the finals with Josh Taylor. So I
Yes.
saw him fight live, even in New Orleans, I believe, when he knocked out, I don't know if it was a Relic or whatever. I saw him fight live.
Yeah.
I think he's a very, very good fighter. I think he adjusts his styles. I think the last guy he fought, Soria from Puerto Rico, was a hard style to fight. He moved on him constantly, and he got criticized a lot for not getting to him. Haney's a big kid at 140.
Very
I know
big
he was
kid.
fighting at 35. He's even a big kid at 140. He's a great boxer. I think it's going to be a great fight. It's just all about if Progress can get inside on this guy. This guy's, he's got a great jab. But remember, Linares had him out in the last round. If Progress tags him, Progress can knock him out too. So it's a much better fight than he's the best guy he's ever fought for sure. Haney, without a doubt. I mean, Gumbo was a little guy coming up in weight. He fought a lot of guys. Just Linares is an old man, So this is by far and away the best guy he's ever fought. I mean, Lomachenko was a smaller guy. A lot of people had him winning. And so I give Regis a good shot in this fight. I really do, more than a lot of people give him, because he's a hell of a fighter, and he can punch with both hands. I seen him. I thought he beat Josh Taylor in a close fight. Could have gone either way, and that's when Josh Taylor was strong at 140 pounds. It's not the same Josh Taylor that fought Lopez that couldn't make weight.
Yeah.
So I give him a good shot in that fight.
Hey, I'm sure he's going to be pleased to hear that. Devin Haney, I say it over and over again. He reminds me of a modern day Terry Norris, just the way he's on his toes, very smooth boxer, a
That's a
boxer
good
puncher, right?
comparison.
What was
Terry
that?
Norris.
Oh, what was that, sir?
That's a good comparison.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Terry Norris.
Yeah.
He reminds me a lot of Terry Norris too. He's got that type of style. He reminds me of him a lot.
Yeah.
Terry Norris. He was a hell of a fighter. I got to tell you, he really was. And this kid here, he's very good. again, I'm an old time guy, and I believe that the old time fighters, everybody in the top 10 was a killer. Now it's a lot easier to maneuver a fighter because there really ain't that much out there. I mean, at 40, you got Progress, you got Haney, you got Lopez going up to 140 pounds right now. And to be honest with you, and the first time he fought in the United States, he fought for us at the World Boxing Series. And now he fights for PVC. But I think Matias, to be honest with you, Sabria Matias is the best of the bunch at that weight class.
Yeah.
He knows how to close the distance. He can punch with both hands, and all the 40-pound guys, he's going to be the boogeyman of that. That believe me, all those guys are going to try to stay away from him because he knows how to close the distance. He can punch with both hands. Now he's training in Mexico in the mountains in Toluca with Panda, Nahar, which he's done a great job with him. But he's coming down from Mexico, and he can go 20 rounds. That guy, he's a fight machine. So I think when the dust sails, if they ever fight each other, I think that's going to be I think that's the best 40-pounder right now, without a doubt, in my eyes.
See,
Okay,
that's the betting horse right there. Those are the ones that a lot of people overlook, and you would have to say that's the Cinderella team if you were playing football. And you also got the undefeated Arnold Barboza, who deserves a title. A title shot.
Yeah.
You got Fresno's own Jose Ramirez, who would love to fight.
Yeah, he's a good, former world
Yes,
champion.
I mean those guys are still out there, but the cream of the crop, these younger guys, they're moving up and they're making the 140-pound, the meat division.
Yeah, no, the 140-pound division is going to get really hot. It really is. And like the 168-pound division. It's a division not only because Canelo's there, but you got Benavides, my guy Morrell. That I tried to make that. We agreed to fight November 25th. Everything was done. Samson came out and announced it, and later the Benavides got cold feet. They didn't want no part of Morrell. They were for 1 year. They were after us, wanted to fight us. When I said, okay, we're making the deal. We're supposed to fight November 25th. He backed out. But he's another one too, like Sabria's Matias. He's one of those kind of guys. A lot of guys are not going to want to fight. The guy can take you out with either hand. And Benavides never fought a full-fledged super middleweight. The guys he's fought are, like Andretti was in his prime. He was a great 54-pounder, a very good 54-pounder, not a great 54-pounder, a good 54-pounder. Lemieux could punch holes through walls at 54, but he's not a 68-pounder. Tyrone Davis, those guys were all smaller guys coming up in weight. Benavides never fought a full-fledged super middleweight, ever, not like Morrell. Okay, and he's got 4-inch reach on him. And with Morrell, he can't use the jab. He's a southpaw. So, I mean, I hope that fight gets made sometime. You don't see me calling out Canelo because you know what? We only got 9 fights. Everybody's afraid of Benavides. Canelo, for some reason, doesn't fight him. We're there. And that's the fight we're looking to do.
I was about to ask you just answered your own question. How do you promote your fighter? How do you get your fighter that next fight? And you just did it right now in black and white. Hey, when you want something, you go after it and you make sure that your product is ready and it's going to manufacture a great outcome, which is a decisive victory.
Well, with Burrell, the way I did it, it was worked out great. It took the kid to go up there. I mean, but I made David Morrell the home fighter in Minneapolis Armory, and I grew up there, and I know how much the people, there's 17 Latins playing for the Minnesota Twins. I figure I make Morrell the hometown guy. And now for the show here on December 16th, the last showtime date, okay, all the ring sides are gone. The place almost sold out. So you got a Cuban fighting out of Minneapolis selling out because the fans are buying tickets, at probably the most beautiful venue in the country. I mean, that's why PVC does 4 shows a year, because every seat's a great seat. But who would ever thought a Cuban kid moved to Minneapolis, become a world champion with 2 professional fights, inter-world champion, and all of a sudden the Minnesota people, he's our hometown guy. I mean, those are the real fans, and I'm very proud that happened. And that's where that's where, I did well with Morrell. I think I got him. I got a whole city behind him, a whole state behind him. And it took the kid to go up there and run around the lakes 30 below zero, Jamel James, during the winter, and a lot of Cubans wouldn't do that. So it takes a special kind of person to have, that strength to go over there and do what he did. So I'm very proud of him.
Speaking of being proud, I'm sure your son is very proud. Those that you've worked with are very proud of you getting into the Hall of Fame. Um, that last hurrah, so to speak. But it doesn't seem to slow you down one bit. But just to put that well-deserved tag next to your name, when it's all said and done, are you going to say to yourself, "I've turned every stone, I've crossed every T, dotted every I," or are you going to say, "Hey, I still got another show to promote"?
Yeah, I think I'm going to still say I have another show to promote. I got so many good young fighters now that give me a strength to work because I know they got the talent be world champions. There's Joannish Tays, 5 professional fights. I get a call from 16 days out for the Crosser Spence fight. My son calls me and says, I got Sergio Garcia. He's a tough dude. He fought Fondero tough. He fought Tony Harrison tough. You want to put that kid that you say can fight a lot with him. And I said, yeah, I'll call you back. I called up Taze and I said, hey, you want to fight this guy? Look at the tape, this and that. The kid called me back in 3 minutes. Says, yeah, I'll take the fight. Okay. And he took the fight with 5 professional fights, 16 days out. And the rest is history. He knocked out Sergio Garcia out, which has never been done before. So those are the kind of guys that motivate me. Guys like Damian Lasky, a guy 6-0, he's already ranked. Guys that Kevin Brown, he's fighting this weekend. He's world ranked because these guys all got 400 or 500 amateur fights. So when they get here, all you got to do is have them in camp with guys like Ronnie Shields. It's got Jack conditioning him. You got Ishmael Salas. I got some guys with Ishmael Salas. I had some guys with Joe Goosen. And you get them to go, to spar 10, 12 rounds, and with the experience they got, they can fight anybody in the world. A lot of these kids that fight internationally have 200-300 fights. So all you got to do is just get them, the distance to go 12 rounds. I put Morrell in with Lennox Allen. He had 2 professional fights in a 12-round fight, and he beat him. Lennox Allen was 22-0. So I got confidence in all these Cuban kids. They travel the whole world. They fought everybody, the Russians, Ukrainians. That here, with the right training and the right team, they can go with anybody. They don't have to have 20 fights. They can go with anybody with 4 or 5. I've proven it. So that's that. A lot of these guys give me a lot of strength to keep going. Guys like Frank Sanchez. He's fighting now in Saudi Arabia, which I'll make the trip with him. Guys like that. Great guys. Another Cuban heavyweight, Lenore Perot, ranked number 4 in the world. He's got 400 amateur fights. So all these guys, give me strength to work. Keep going. Because I see so much talent there. And I get up every day, I work out, try to feel good, and keep going. That's the only thing I know how to do is boxing.
Well, hey, business, and you have a heart and soul for the sport, and you just have that knack in finding the talent. We're going to take some of today's fighters. We'll say maybe 2 in the fighters of yesterday. I'm going to put the promoter's hat back on you. We're going to promote 2 fights, a co-main event and a main event, dream fights.
Okay.
What fighter from yesterday would you match up with today? And it doesn't matter if, we could fluctuate a little bit on the weight. So let's hear it. I want to hear your co-main event and your main event.
Okay. Well, my main event would be Roberto Duran against Julio Cesar Chavez at 135 pounds.
Ooh.
That would be my main event. Okay.
I was thinking about that
and
today, honestly.
that would be my main event. And let me see here. I want to think about this. The co-main event.
Hey, you could put Duran in a doubleheader.
Yeah. No, I gotta go with. I like to see Tito Trinidad. Let me see here. Who'd be a great fight with Tito Trinidad? I gotta. If I do the two Puerto Ricans, Benitez, I guess Tito Trinidad,
Great
the Puerto
counterpuncher.
Rican Civil War. Okay, I think I would like to see that the radar against an aggressive guy like Trinidad. And I was proud to be there when Camacho fought Chopper Rosario in 1987. That was the Puerto Rican Civil War.
Here,
This
Camacho in the
is the
second round.
Puerto Rican. Yeah, that's the one I like. I like to see. I like to see that Wilfredo Benitez, the radar against Tito Trinidad. And when and I'm talking about Benitez that beat Antonio Cervantes when he was 17 years old, I believe he was
Yeah.
when he won the first world title.
Yeah.
You know, and that would be that would be a classic. Those two fights.
You know what? I wish we would have saw the rematch with Fredo Benitez against. I mean, Wilfred Benitez against Sugar Ray Leonard. I wish we would have saw that rematch. I also,
Yeah, yeah,
I love the fight with Frankie Rando and Refredo. No, not Gomez, but Chapo, Edwin Rosario. I wish they could have
yeah,
ran it back or could have caught when Rosario was, in his prime. There's a lot of fights that are out there, and we never got those rematches. But no, that's
yeah.
that
No, that
headliner you
would have
got,
been that would.
Roberto Duran and Chavez. That says a lot. It really does,
Yeah,
because that would be
that
outstanding dream
that would
match.
be my main event at 35, and basically, there's some old timers that thought that Benny Leonard is the best lightweight that ever lived, and but most of the old timers I knew, that the Dundies and the Mafuz and Jamil Shaday's, they used to always say nobody could beat Duran at 35. Nobody. He was a stone killer, and Chavez to me would probably be of the guys, probably be his greatest challenge.
The Hall of Famer, and now he's retired. Congratulations to Lee Samuels. He would always tell me, he said, Richard, Roberto Duran, he was just mean. He was just a mean
Yeah,
dude, period. He was just mean. And he just had
yeah,
that. He was just ripped from a different cloth.
yeah. He's just he was the Duran as he was just, he's special. He really was. I don't think that I like to see another kid come around like Duran again, but I don't think so. He was a special guy, to do what he did, and in boxing, it's amazing. I can talk about Duran. He was with me for 33 fights, and it was, to me, it was, I had him when he was an older guy. I never was there when he fought Leonard. I was never there, at 35 when he fought De Jesus. I seen him in tape, and he was unbelievable. But I'm an old time guy. I like to, a guy like Kid Gavilan, Ray Robinson. I mean, he was asked who's the best fighter you fought, and he used to always say that young kid from Cuba, Kid Gavilan. He fought him twice, 15 rounds and 10 rounds, and they were both like that. So it's a guy like that. I spent a lot of time with Gavilan when I moved to Miami, and I would always pick his brains. And those guys, they're fighting. A lot of these guys, they're fighting 3 times a month.
Yeah, back in the
They
day.
had their
Yes,
day.
absolutely.
They were. You couldn't fight for a world title if you didn't have 90 fights, 80 fights. You can even think about it. And back then, those 15-round fights, that was the difference between the men and the children. Most of these fights, like Sofia Padilla used to tell me, in a 15-round fight, the fight don't start until the eighth round. That's when
Yeah,
the fights
that's right.
start, really starts. And he could fight 15 rounds with his mouth closed. Sofia Padilla defended his title 22 times. And when they cut it to 12 rounds, like I say, if Duran would have been Marvin Hagler, 12 rounds, he was winning the fight. But those last 3 rounds, the strength and it took over. The size and the strength took over. Maybe if Barkley would have been 15 rounds, you never know. It was a very
Yeah.
tough fight. It was a very, really rough fight. But maybe those 3 rounds, you don't know. It was a different 15 rounds to 12, it's a totally different fight. Today, these guys are told, just a lot of these guys, and like I was telling you before, they got 10 professionals. They're fighting for a world title. Back then, you had to, pay your dues, really pay your dues.
Exactly. And you needed those 15-round fights because a fighter like Alexis Arguello, they didn't get started till after the 7th round. They're barely warming up. They'd give the
Yeah,
first 5 away just to try to figure out, and then they would just turn it on. I mean, they needed that second half of the
yeah.
fight.
Arguello, what a fighter he was!
Oh,
My
yeah.
God, Alexis Arguello. Yeah, he was. That was a lot of times they were talking about. They say that Duran and Arguello. I know another fight they were trying to make was Antonio Cervantes and Duran. It was a lot of back then. I'm telling you, every guy in the top 10 was a stone killer. Every guy there was. It's a different game now. First of all, back then you'd call a gym in Puerto Rico, and you'd have 50 professional fighters training in the gym. Now there's no fighters. There's no there's not. I bet you there's maybe in the 80s there was probably 8,000-9,000 licensed boxers. Now they're probably not even 50% of that. Now it's very difficult to make matches. Very difficult to find opponents because it's there ain't that many fighters anymore, like there used to be. And that's why I think in the future you're going to be seeing, instead of Puerto Rico against Mexico, you're going to see a lot of Cuba against Mexico, because there's so many Cuban fighters here in the United States that came over in the last 3 years, and so many different weight classes. And Puerto Rico, they got Subriz Matias, they got Emmanuel Rodriguez, but at one time they had all the champions, Gomez, Benitez, Rosario, Camacho, the list goes on and on. So it's definitely in Puerto Rico is not the same type of talent there was like there was in the 80s. You had so many great fighters, Tac Cotto, Trinidad, Sammy Fuentes, Chino Cardona, Angel Hernandez. They had a great bunch of fighters. Now it's not the same anymore. So the game's changed.
It has changed, but one thing that hasn't changed is you. You've been able to adapt, you've been able to overcome, and you're still doing it today. Because a lot of promoters, they can't make that transition. Managers, they can't make that transition. It's okay to use the term old school, but you got to be able to make that transition to today's wants and needs. And today's athletes are faster and stronger. I think they're a little different when it comes to gutsy, because we had no choice but to face each other when you got to see the likes of, once again, I say it, the four kings: Durand, Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Marvin Hagler. You're still doing it, man. Going into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, well,
You're
thank God, and it's the only thing I've done for 40 years, and like I say, it's every day you're out there, and you're getting calls from fighters 7 days a week, and you've been around boxing a long time. It's not it's not a very easy business. You really got to love what you do, and you got to have the right talent to make
Yeah.
champions, and as you grow with them and you see them grow, that gives you more confidence to continue with other fighters.
Well, you know what? I got to pick your brain. When we get out the show today, I definitely got to give you my number, because you're going to be my Rolodex. You're going to be my black book when I'm going to say, hey, what happened in
You call me anytime
1978
you want,
exactly at this
I'm
time and
here
this
for
time?
you.
And I'm learning as we go, just having you on the show. I got to have you back on the show. I look forward to it.
Anytime. I'm back anytime, and when hopefully some of these Cuban kids will be fighting in major fights. We can talk about them.
Absolutely.
And like I say, I'm about making fights, and that's the reason I want to fight Morrell with Benavides, because everybody thinks he's a boogeyman. And if Canelo don't fight him, I think it's the fight to make. Two young guys, they're natural super middleweights fighting each other, and I think people would want to see that. Two guys in their prime fighting each other,
Well, hey,
and that's what I want to see. The fans got to see. They got fights. Fights got to be made. That's the only way boxing will survive. The best got to fight the best. And that's the reason, like you mentioned, Progress against Haney. I got to give them to both of them. They're fighting. They're two young guys, in their prime. And I'm looking forward to seeing that fight. And hopefully it'll be a great fight for the fans.
listen, man, before we let you go, we're going to have some fun right now. Luis, you're about to fight for the world title. Who's going to be in your corner? Who's going to be your trainer? What song are you coming out to? And who would you have loved to share the ring with for that title?
Who would I like? Who would I work the corner? I got to go with Angelo Dundee, because Chris Dundee is my mentor, his brother, Angelo is, it's since I was a young guy, so I gotta say Angelo is my trainer. Okay. Now, what else?
What would be your
was the
walkout
question
song
again?
coming into the ring?
I gotta go with Waina. That's the only one a Cuban song.
There you go. And who would you like to see across the
And
ring from you?
who would I like to be across the ring
Yeah,
from?
who would you like to look into the eyes and say, okay, that's my opponent for this title fight?
Well, since Angelo's going to be in my corner, I like to see Ray Leonard across the ring. That's who I like to see.
Okay, there you go. There you go. There you go. Hey, man, we have fun here on The Fighter's Voice, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. And like I said, after we go in
Thank
closing,
you so much.
After we go in closing, I want you to stick around. I'm going to exchange numbers with you. We're going to.
I will. I'm here now. We'll share numbers,
Absolutely.
and anytime you call me, I'm here, and we'll talk about it. I appreciate very much, this time, and and for me to be able to talk about some of the great memories I have, and again, just to be mentioning my name in the Hall of Fame, I'm very proud, and because I've been involved with so many fighters in the Hall of Fame now that it's just nice to have my name mentioned there.
Hey, you heard it from the man himself. I'm your host, Richard Ortiz of The Fighter's Voice, the only voice that matters. And we want to thank our guests and congratulate the one, the only, the legendary man himself, Luis DEBUBAS, into the Boxing Hall of Fame. As always, it's a wrap. Thumbs up for Richie.
Okay, fight fans, it's not goodbye, but until next week.
Remember,
it's always voiceography at its finest. So on behalf of Richard Ortiz, the special guests, saying hasta luego, babies. And always, thanks for listening.